And we're going to sink our teeth into that, looking at how to get the Dapchi girls back. Let's quickly go to Abuja with Mark and Ajuri for that.
Well, thank you, Gimba. Joining us right now is Captain Bish Johnson, who is a former U.S. Navy and Army officer. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Well, just a couple, I'm sorry about that. Just a couple of weeks back, I mean, you were here and we're discussing security, and it was over this debate of state police or no state police. And now we're looking at a situation in Dapchi where 110 girls have now been confirmed missing. We were told before now that Dapchi had never really recorded an incident of, any Boko Haram attacks. And we're also beginning to see that just weeks before, troops were withdrawn from around the Dapchi area. Do you think that we got too comfortable that we're winning the war against terrorism, and so we're letting down our guard?
Well, I've had those blames, going to the military for withdrawal of troops from Dapchi. The truth of the matter remains that the military cannot maintain troops in every hotspot in Nigeria indefinitely. At some point in time, they will have to withdraw some troops from one area and reassign them to other areas that there's more serious threat. You saw what is happening in the North Central. The military has to now go in there. These troops that are going into North Central are coming from somewhere. The number of troops is static. We are not recruiting as much as we can. And even when you recruit, you will give them some time for those troops to be trained and then be available for service. They're not available for service right upon recruitment. It takes some time of training. It's unlike some other countries. Our recruitment here in this country is not on a daily basis. They do it seasonal. In the US, there's recruitment every day. People are going to boot camp for training every day in America for them to be able to maintain certain number of troop level. We don't have that here in Nigeria. The Nigerian military, because of their involvement in internal security, which by the way should even be a secondary responsibility for them, is in every hotspot in this country. And so for that reason, in certain areas where they think that, look, we have brought things under control in this area, they will have to move troops from that area to a different area where there is much more serious need for those troops. It now goes back to policing. We need to get our police right. If we get police right in this country, we will get this country right. As what we are facing today is a consequence of years and decades of negligence of the Nigerian police. We've not brought our police to the standard where they can maintain law and order in this country. They are the agency that is supposed to be more spread in this country than any other law enforcement agency. But you find out that most of the times, even where they are available, they don't have the manpower, they don't have the training, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the funding. So there's one problem after the other with Nigerian police.
Yeah, but whatever happened to... Yes, I understand that, of course. The military cannot keep troops in an area forever. And sometimes when it looks like nothing is happening in a community, you feel it's relatively safe. But then whatever happened to the thought that, what if we move away from here and something happens? I mean, don't we make a case for contingency just in case something happens?
The question now is, what if you don't act, for example, when all hell was breaking loose in Benue State and the military remains in Dapchi and nobody goes to Benue State to stop what was going on in Benue State? What do you think is going to happen? So there was a more serious need of the military forces in North Central. So they had to move assets from areas where there is relative peace to other areas where they are very much needed. And that is what you saw. They cannot keep troops in every part of this country. It's impossible.
Ultimately, if your kind of assessment of the situation is that the military is trying to take up the responsibility, if you will, that should originally be placed on the Nigerian police force, and as a result is being overstretched.
Of course.
Then what are the solutions in view of? I know you talked about, yes, lack of resources, lack of recruitment, etc. But what are the solutions to these problems? How do you actually address some of these core problems we've had, given our institutional dynamics?
The problem, the solution to this problem is vast, is big. okay, because of the years of negligence, because of politics, because of tribe, because of ethnicity, because of religion. We need to sit down and have an honest and adult discussion on how we can forge ahead as a country. There are so many things going wrong with our country. Our federal government is over-bloated with a lot of irrelevant stuff that they get themselves involved in. As a consequence, they are neglecting their primary responsibility, which is protection of life and property. We need to sit down and discuss what structure of government we need. We need to restructure Nigeria. Let's put it that way. Nigeria needs restructuring so that the responsibility of the federal government can be reduced. Our federal government cannot be jack of all trade and master of none. That's what it is right now. That is why the federal government is very ineffective and inefficient. We need state police so that every state can secure and protect their citizens. Could you imagine if Yobe State had their own police? Do you think that that government Girls Science and Technical College would have been left unprotected? Knowing Boko Haram's appetite for young girls and women, that such a school could have been left unprotected like that? Maybe not.
Mr. Johnson, in fairness to the realities on ground, the Yobe State government right now is operating the lowest budget of the 36 states of the Federation. You have unpaid teachers and unpaid members of the civil service. There are already funding constraints within Yobe and within many states, not just Yobe, across the country as a result. Now, they have a state police force. How do they arm? How do they maintain? How do they sustain a police force given these realities?
You see, this thing takes me aback when people say that states are not viable, that they cannot sustain themselves. That is completely incorrect. There is no state in this country that is not viable. The only thing states need to be viable are the people. You don't need to have gold buried under your soil for you to be viable. Could you imagine if they had their own police, and if you overspeed, you're issued ticket? If you park illegally, you are issued ticket. That police alone can be a money making. It can be money cow for Yobe State government. That police alone. The reason why states are not viable in this country is because the federal government has grabbed every source of making money in this country, leaving the states with little or nothing to generate revenue, and making the states to be lazy. So instead of the states to look behind their backyard and see what can give them money, they rush down to Abuja at the end of the month, collect a paycheck. Most of the time, the paycheck, some of them are embezzled because the federal government at the same time is not providing oversight to see where these monies are going. So at the end of the day, it boils down to the kind of government and the type of the structure of government that we are running in this country.
Well, Captain, I'm just interested. So you say that you are assuming, because we have not been told that the troops that were taken away, withdrawn from Dapchi were the ones that were sent to the North Central. We don't have that information as of yet.
Okay.
You're making that based on the assumptions that you have.
And based on my experience.
And based on your experience.
And that these troops are human beings like you and I.
And it could
and
be
that they have family.
It could be, yes, it could be a very worthy explanation. It might as well be that that was, what transpired. That
people go and leave.
Those areas were taken, people in those safe areas, in quote, were taken away to areas where people, were being killed.
Yeah.
Now, if that is the situation, shouldn't we have put down a contingency plan in case something should happen? Especially when we look at the high risk. I mean, you talked about Boko Haram's high appetite for women and girls.
Yeah.
And we know that we have an all-girls secondary school located in Dapchi, for instance.
Right.
And anything can happen.
Right.
I mean, shouldn't we have put in place a contingency, say, if something happens, call on this, call on this hotspot or call on this hotline, and, maybe, there might have been some rapid response. We never can tell. Because people in Dapchi said they saw these people being taken away. Some even reported that the trucks broke down, the vehicles broke down, and they saw girls, in some form of distress, but the villagers looked like they could do very little about it.
Of course. Well, I've always said that there should always be contingency plan. We should always have mechanism, very easy mechanism for us to report situations that we see that are unusual. I've always made that case. But the truth of the matter is that even when you call and there is nobody to respond, what do? You know, you're saying that this is. I'm telling you that the movement of troops is based on my experience.
Yeah, but I totally understand your explanation. My point now is, isn't that taking things for granted? I mean, it's a situation of where we say, well, nothing is happening here, and so we would not make any plan. We would not be proactive about our security. Must something happen first before we send people there?
No. I don't believe in reactionary law enforcement, which is what we are doing, is we wait till there's a problem and we'll go there and we react. I believe in taking preemptive measures. But the truth of the matter is that the preemptive measure, you can only take preemptive measure to the extent of the assets and resources that you have available. If you don't have troops to respond, you cannot manufacture them. There's nothing you can do. There has to be troops so that when you call, they can respond. If you don't have, what do you do? So you have to work with the army that you have right now and not the one that you wish you had.
Mr. Johnson, I want to try and avoid the conversation going into a restructuring debate, but you say that that's the solution. So it sounds as if anything short of a complete restructuring of the country, we're going to be in the same situation. Do I understand you correctly?
Of course. If you don't restructure this country, we are going to, this is going to be this deja vu. Every now and then, we are going to get into the same problem because we have not done the things that we're supposed to do. Our federal government is distracted.
Well, we understand that Gimba Nyota have another guest in Lagos. Let's see if he agrees with you.